This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December Cape Carteret Planning Board meeting. Full house, that's great to see. Calling the meeting to order. Then we're going to start off with approval of the meeting minutes from October 5th. That was sent out earlier. I haven't gotten any comments sent to me. Does anybody have anything they wanted to add? Somebody want to make a motion to? Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Barb, a minute. So the October 5th meeting minutes are approved. Barb, did you want to talk a little bit about? Barb? To talk a little bit about making meeting minutes a little earlier here?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
For these meetings, and we do have a video recording of all of our
Right.
meetings as well. So,
Well, Barb, weren't you talking about trying to make sure that we weren't talking over each other and you wanted us to use a microphone. Okay, sounds good. The podium microphone. Okay, great. Okay. There is a mic over there now, or no?
no, we can't use these with a disc, but we can take one of these.
We can give
mics
somebody
and
one.
we can actually use that one. You might want to turn it on.
Okay, folks, first on the agenda is review of the submission for a special use permit for 101 Bogue Sound Drive. The applicant is Ben Westby. I think Zach's going to say a few words first.
All right, so this is a application for a special use permit for 101 Bogue Sound Drive. And currently there are 3 storage units that are located on the site. And the proposed special use would be to add a 4th storage unit to the site. And pull that up. And so what the planning board does with the special use permits, since this is a little bit of a new process, is to determine a statement of consistency. So looking at the special use permit and then determining whether or not that special use permit is consistent or inconsistent with the 2007 Campbell Land Use Plan. So we developed a draft statement of consistency, which indicates that it would appear to be consistent with section 4.1 and 4.5. Subsection D of the 2007 Campbell Land Use Plan, but it'll be up to the planning board to determine whether it is consistent or inconsistent, and to develop that statement of consistency to forward on to the Board of Commissioners. But the property is located, like I said, 101 Bogue Sound Drive, and let me share my screen so I can pull that up. So yeah, that's the special use permit application there. I think that covers the majority of the items. So the main focus is really analyzing whether the proposed special use is consistent or inconsistent with the adopted Campbell Land Use Plan. And we're using that 2007 Campbell Land Use Plan since we don't have an adopted comprehensive plan or updated Campbell Land Use Plan in place at the present time. So we're going off of that 2007 plan, and that statement of consistency is included in the packet. So that's just a sample to work off of, and that can be amended as needed by the planning board to make a determination. And if you want to hand it over to the applicant to provide their presentation on it.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Jane Gordon. I'm with the Kirkman Whitford Law Firm in Morehead City. I represent the applicant, Ben Westby, and the owner of the property is Carteret Self Storage, LLC. As Mr. Steffi said, this property is in the B20 commercial district. It is a self-storage facility. My client bought the property in January, has made considerable improvements to the property, actually took out the buildings that were there and has replaced them with newer buildings with some different sizes to the storage units in there. And what he wants to do is put a fourth building within the footprint of the existing three buildings. Mr. Steffi, do you have a picture of the site plan on there, or should I pass one out? Or think that you may have it. What works best for the board? Okay, let me. You have. See on. Let me get back to the mic. You can see here that the three buildings there are sort of like a U, if you will, and the building that's proposed would be, in between the buildings on, I guess, the north side and south side of the property. So what my client wants to do doesn't expand the footprint of the use, doesn't change the setbacks, and in terms of the units, because what he's done is there were a bunch of really small units in there when it was operating before. He's got bigger units in the building, so even with the addition of 20 units in the building he's proposing, the total number of units added is only 7. So the addition of this fourth building wouldn't change the traffic in and out of the facility by any appreciable amount. Self-storage facilities are generally not the kinds of businesses that see a great deal of traffic. They don't generate a great deal of noise. It is consistent really with other commercial uses in the district, which is zoned for retail sales, banking, daycare, public utilities, restaurants, schools, all veterinary offices, all of those kinds of things. It would not create any adverse impact or impact the surrounding neighborhood any more than any of those other kinds of businesses would. In fact, it would probably produce much less noise, traffic, and other kinds of disruption. There really wouldn't be any adverse environmental impact from it. Other improvements that he plans to make to the property is he's paving the driveway and installing a culvert. He will install lighting on the buildings to provide some security. It's not a 24-hour facility, but there will be some lighting there to provide some security, but not big floodlights or anything that would create a lot of light pollution. He'll be adding a vegetative screen on the south side where there is a residential lot behind it, outside the B20 zone. And as far as the land use plan goes, the goal of providing opportunities, balancing growth and development and conservation, promoting land use that is compatible with land suitability. It won't have any kind of adverse impact on the environmental, coastal waters or anything like that. So it's consistent with section 4.1 of the current land use plan. In addition to that, when you look at section 4.5B, commercial classification, it's already in a commercial district, which is intended, as it says in the land use plan, to delineate lands that can accommodate a wide range of retail, wholesale, office, business services, and personal services. The use that's currently there and that would be added, to the existing use by adding one more building is consistent with that commercial classification under the CAMA land use plan. So we think that it is consistent with the core land use plan of the town. I'm happy to have Mr. Westby or his contractor answer any questions, or I can answer any questions that you might have, or provide any additional information.
Question?
Does our existing B20 zone allow self-storage units? Yes or no?
No, and the reason, right, and so under the ordinance as it exists now, if it is not a use that is not listed as a permitted use in whatever zone, you can apply for a special use permit for that particular kind of use, because the zoning ordinance can't anticipate every single use that there is. And so the mechanism is there in the ordinance to allow the Board of Commissioners to approve a special use permit for any use that isn't specifically delineated in the ordinance.
But I believe there's a caveat that it has to be consistent with what that plan was. Can we pull that up, Zach? Yes, please. You'll have to be patient. This is the first time we're dealing with a special use permit.
Sure. Well, it's a new ordinance, so it's a process, right? I mean, I've got it in front of me. I mean, I'll wait till he puts it up there, but. Okay, so it says special uses are land uses that are generally compatible with other land uses permitted by right in a zoning district, but which require individual review of their location, design, and configuration to evaluate and minimize the potential for adverse impacts on adjacent property and uses. The other, just to list some of the permitted uses in a B20 zone, are retail sales, banking, daycare, food trucks, public utilities, restaurants, schools, veterinary offices, other kinds of offices. A self-storage facility is consistent with those other kinds of uses, particularly with offices, public utilities. It is not the kind of use that generates a tremendous amount of traffic or noise or disruption to surrounding communities. It's very much like an office environment, probably actually creates less traffic than an office or retail, certainly than a restaurant would generate. So we think it is compatible with the other uses in the B20 zone. Okay.
By adding this third building, you're consuming more square footage from an impervious standpoint. So I'm wondering how you've calculated that to be consistent with what's allowed.
Do you want to?
It's under an acre of land, so it's not in any state stormwater permitting applications. It's only like 0.6 of an acre.
The total impervious, if you look at the site plan, the
The total impervious surface is 8,000 square feet roof area, but the parking lot is not going to be a paved parking area. It's going to be
Right.
a crush and run type situation.
right. So
So the
yeah,
whole area of the lot is not impervious, it's just a roof surface.
that's right. I think that the total lot square footage is what, 26,000, and the
26,000 square feet.
footprint of the buildings with the fourth building added would be
Right.
right at 8,000. So it still leaves about 2/3 of the lot area that's pervious, with the gravel to allow the absorption and drainage.
I have a second question. And this is a self-storage unit, right?
That's correct.
So the general public doesn't have access to these buildings? Is there some sort of control mechanism?
Yes, they're
anticipated?
yes, it's fenced in, and they're installing a rolling gate. Was it going to be with a keypad?
Yeah, the rolling gate will have an automatic keypad entry, which will only be accessible by customers at the store.
And that's not in place today, right?
No, sir. We're waiting for this special use to get the permits to build the fourth building. Either granted or not granted, I would not take that fence down due to theft of metal's going to the roof. And that situation, we're just waiting for this to upgrade the fence, the sliding gate instead of the swinging gates, and the apron that we're proposing to put at the front driveway with drainage through it.
And that was my next question about the fence itself. And can you share with us what your plans are to improve that fence? Today it's fairly rusted. It's unsightly.
All brand new fence, all the way around, 8 foot high, with a sliding gate as we talked about at the front with an apron on it with a keypad system. The fence all the way around on 4 sides will be brand new.
Is an 8-foot fence permitted in the UDO? I thought it was 6 foot was our highest fence.
I think.
While you're looking that up, just to follow up on the fence itself. So your plan today, if this is approved, is to put in some sort of vegetation on the south side of that fence in between the residential area?
That's correct. And the plan is to put what the ordinance requires, the screening just adjacent to the residential use. But the plan is to install that screen across the entire south wall of the property.
Site plan. Yeah, I think it's what your vegetation.
Okay.
Thank you.
It has also directional lighting on it that'll show you the direction of the light that aims that way.
So this looks a little different than what you just handed me, which is accurate engineering.
The dimensions are the same. The one I just handed in was drawn today by me.
Okay, because it looks like the setback is a little different on the one you just handed me.
Which one is different for setback?
It looks like on the one you just handed me, all 3 of those east-west buildings have the same setback. And
You're
on this
correct.
one, it does not.
Yes.
So this is accurate?
Close as I can get it, because what you're looking at here is,
And do you
this is
see
the
that?
original fence line that's here. This is the original property line. He went to that property line from there.
Okay, and what
I
about,
went to the fence.
what about the buildings? See this?
Yeah, there is that offset there.
There is, and so it's not on. It's not on this. Okay.
Well, I want to stay on this fencing thing for a second. So the vegetative, you're anticipating improving the aesthetics, I assume,
Yes.
on that south fencing. Has any thought been given to doing the same thing along Vogue Sound in terms of improving the look?
I did one, we have to do it by residential. I believe your codes call for it on a residential area. And there is a 60-foot area of residential only. So we went past that and did it on the whole south property line and then turned it back coming up towards the gate by one. Now, we could improve that by a couple more trees in that area if needed.
You mean along Bogue Sound Drive is what you're asking?
Yeah, my concern is, and I really like the improvements that have taken place in the last 6 months or so. But to continue with that, I mean, these residents in this neighborhood, and I've heard from them, that they don't like the appearance of that facility. Now, it's better than it was, but if we could add the shrubbery or some sort of vegetative screen on the Vogue Sound side as well, I think that would make it more.
Some of the recommendations that I read were that the screening had to be.
Okay, let's address his question. His question doesn't have to do specifically with the requirements. He's asking whether you'd be willing to put screening along here.
Yeah, we
That's
can,
really
We
a
could
question.
put screening, but what do we ask for the height of that screening? Because if we get too high, we're gonna be interfering with signage and the side of it to draw business to it.
Well, the sign's over here. He's talking about
Yeah,
adding screen there.
we can look at adding some vegetative screen along the Bogue Sound Drive of that fence. You know, if there's not a regulation determining height and whatnot, we'll do it in order to allow for trafficability around the property, to make sure that there's no, risk to vehicles trying to maneuver around there. But we can do something along that line just to make it more appealing for the residents to drive by.
If you look at the requirements on it, the trees that you have for residential screening and commercial is a 10-foot base.
Okay.
We would kind of be
Tracy,
going
Tracy,
that way. with
that's, okay. He's not talking specifically about that. But what the applicant has indicated is that he's willing to consider adding screening along Bogue Sound Drive to improve the appearance to the residential neighbors.
Thank you.
And what you have for that screening here listed, is that in accordance with our UDO, those plants that you put on here?
This wouldn't, maybe,
Because-
I didn't.
The screening that is proposed here, because of the tightness here, is sort of 8 feet width. The UDO does require 10 feet. I mean, they will grow to be 10 feet, but initially when they'd be put in, they'd be at 8 feet.
Yeah, I think I understand like the UDO, it seems like you require the 10-foot base in order to accommodate a 10-foot tree, right? An eventual growth of that high. Whereas we think we can achieve the same thing with an 8-foot width, which would then allow for additional maneuverability within the property to make sure vehicles aren't getting stuck or anything.
I gave you 2 plants up there. I gave you a holly and an arborvitae. The arborvitae is a slow growing tree. It grows up 15 feet high with a 4 to 6 foot base. I gave you the holly, which grows to a 15 foot with a 10 foot base. We were trying to go with a smaller base to get, as Ben said, the maneuverability of people in automobiles or anything going around the unit. That's what we prefer, but we could go either way with it. There's 26-foot-1 setback from that fence to that building. With that being said, the 10-foot spread still gives us 16 feet between the tree and the building itself.
Does anyone have any other questions? So we're in an interesting time period here, right? we have the new UDO, and where at the end of this meeting, we're going to be talking about the new land use plan. And in this case, where you're asking for consistency to the 2007
Yeah.
land use plan. So it's kind of a funny
Right.
animal there. I also I just want to say this for the benefit of the people who have some opposition to this. We recently had someone else request to put some storage right over there. And that did not receive a favorable recommendation because we didn't feel it was consistent with the vision that we were working on, or the vision that we've ever had in the town. And that's why storage was not on the permitted uses, in the permitted use table. During that period of time, Mr. Westby bought the property. He was able to kind of get in there because he wasn't changing the footprint. Right. So there were 3 buildings. He was kind of grandfathered in there. That was the consensus, is he was grandfathered in there with those 3 buildings. And that was why that was able to proceed. So I'm a little, I am a little bit hesitant about, are we doing something here that is outside of what we initially intended for the town, and what we also intend for the future of the town? The steering committee is here, who worked on the land use plan with us, and there had always been discussion that we really didn't want to see storage along 24. So I kind of just want to get that out there, because those are the things that have come from the folks in town and up to this point, and from the steering committee.
Well, bear in mind that it's already a self-storage facility as a non-conforming use with the 3 buildings that are there. The application is only to add a 4th building within the existing footprint. So it is not a significant expansion of the use that's there now, and would not have really any impact on the community, the neighboring properties, on traffic, on the environment, on noise, anything else beyond what's already there. So for purposes of this application, I think the board has to look at whether the addition of this 1 building within the existing footprint of the use is consistent with the commercial district as described in the existing land use plan. If there's a future land use plan that gets adopted, I mean, the board can't try to figure out whether this application for this use is consistent with a plan that may be adopted in the future. What this board needs to do is consider whether it's consistent with the plan that we have now, which is the one from, I guess, 2007. And we believe that it is, for the reasons that I articulated. And certainly when you compare it to other commercial uses that are permitted uses, it has really a building nestled between other existing buildings is going to have, really minimal to no impact, adverse impact on the community or on the town. And certainly doesn't signal, I don't think, a plan by the town to expand the availability of self-storage facilities broadly across the town. This is a very unique set of circumstances that, in my analysis, make it much easier to approve and to enable this property owner to make, a better use of the property that he's invested in, which of course is a consideration for the board as well as all of the other factors. Is people ought to be able to use the property that they've purchased. North Carolina has a long history of legislatively and in case law of wanting to allow property owners to use their properties for what they want to use them for. So I think if you focus on the fact that we're talking about one building within that footprint, in this one use in this one lot, based on the CAMA use plan that we have now and knowing what we've articulated about where the building is and all of the other improvements that are going to be made to the property, we believe that it is consistent and should be, and we would ask that you would find it consistent with the existing land use plan.
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Paxton.
I have some experience with stormwater requirements in CAMA. They consider grass impervious. And are you telling us that crush and run is pervious, that it will allow water to run through it? And what happens if it's not and it doesn't?
Well, it's gravel, yes, not grass, gravel, right.
If they consider grass impervious, how do you think they consider gravel, crush and run?
I'm not sure they do consider grass to be impervious. I've not
Yes, they
seen
do.
that. I've not seen that.
Yes, they do. But crush and run, are you telling us that this parking area will be pervious? Yes or no?
Yes.
And what happens if it's not?
Well, that's a bit like asking, I mean, so you're suggesting that my yard is all impervious surface?
No.
Which is grass.
No.
I mean,
I'm suggesting that according to the major CAMA plan that I received, they considered grass impervious. They also considered crush and run impervious. So
I've not seen what you're referring to, and I'd have to take a look at it
I'm
to
not
understand that.
I'm not an
And this is, yeah.
If for some reason crush and run doesn't allow proper, flow of water off the property,
No.
then that hits my bottom line as a business owner. I can't have customers getting their self-storage facility flooded, right? I would make every effort to, make sure that we have proper drainage on the property. If for some reason that isn't certain, make sure we have proper drainage on the property for my own customers and also for the residents and the property owners around.
Just want us to all be aware and go on record as to that issue. That's all.
Okay.
Impervious surface is considered a hard surface. Grass in a CAMA regulation setback area is within a 75-foot AEC. We are out of the 75-foot AEC, and in that 75-foot AEC, of the total impervious surface with under roof, driveways, concrete, or anything, I have to be at 35% impervious surface. With the 8,000 square feet and the 24,000 on the lot, we are 32% impervious surface. So by CAMA regulations, we are inside that buffer.
Thank you.
So, I weigh in on the crushed 50 or washed 57 stone, I believe, is considered pervious for crush and run, and I think that's a state requirement there. And I think what you're referring to on the grass is within the AC and where it's been packed from vehicles parking over that. Yeah, but they could use 57, I think washed 57 stone, which is considered pervious. So I think that's, one approach they could use to kind of remedy that.
Just for general information, so they're using a lot of concrete now, crushed concrete. That's kind of a no-no because it still has the chemical and the binding agents in that. So once it does get wet and driven over, it does become concrete and packed again, where the crush and run can dislodge and locate and drain water through it.
And in regard to the question about the fence height, it's a little bit unclear. The ordinance addresses residential fence heights. I don't know that it provides a limitation on the commercial areas, but if it's a combination screen, it appears that the minimum height is 8 feet. Obviously, they wouldn't probably want an 8-foot fence with a combination screen along the front that's facing 24. But from what I was able to see in there, I think the height would be a minimum of 8 feet if it's a combination screen that's being used for the buffer requirements. Just to answer that question, but I don't think that I was not able to see anything in there that was a limitation specifically for commercial properties in terms of the height limit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else?
Question, Zach, was it, when you said combination screen, is that a combination of fence and shrubs or trees?
Yes, yeah, it's a combination of fence material and vegetation or plants. I've got that. Might be hard to see up there, but that's
Yeah,
kind of the
I can't quite read it. Okay, thanks. And Susan, is there a requirement for us to vote on this now? Because, and the only reason I say that is if we defer and the new plan is out, then we will at least know what we're voting on and consistent with the future plan.
I would agree with that position.
So are you suggesting to wait off until the new comprehensive Campbell land use plan is in place?
I'm not suggesting, I'm asking.
Yeah,
If we have to vote tonight or if we can wait.
I don't think that would be appropriate since they had their complete application in time. I would be hesitant to wait off until a future plan adoption date. I think they would be grandfathered in under the current 2007 Campbell land use plan. So
because of their submission
against
when
that
they
plan.
submitted, because of when they submitted it.
Yes,
Okay.
because the application was, fully was completed and submitted during the 2007 Campbell land use plan.
Okay.
A period when that was in effect.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Now, I know Ms. Gordon, right? Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
I know she has briefed that this is consistent with other B20 uses. Where could we see, where could I get a better picture of what that list is?
We could go to, we could pull up the table of permitted and special uses. But I think, going back to
Oh,
what.
no, I'm not talking about ours. I'm talking about what we don't have in our. So, Ms. Gordon, I understood her comments about it, that it was consistent with other B20 uses. And so my question would be, what is that list of uses that you're talking about? Because you mentioned office buildings, but certainly a storage unit is nothing like an office building. So I don't know if it would be consistent with that type of.
Well, the impact of it is consistent with an office building. If you're looking at the impact that it has on the community, and the other permitted, many of the permitted uses are retail sales, banking, daycare, food trucks, public utilities, restaurants, schools, veterinary offices.
So you're making that statement based on community impact, not necessarily on specific use.
Well, a self-storage facility is a commercial use where someone rents a place to store their whatever they want to store in there. It isn't the kind of use that when you look at the list of what is enumerated in the table as requiring special use permits, it has a much less impact than a lot of those, like an ABC store, churches, lodges, community centers. When you look at the list of permitted and special uses, because I went through this under B20, a lot of what are permitted uses are uses that sort of have what looks to be a relatively modest impact in terms of noise, environmental, traffic, people, those kinds of things. When you look at what's enumerated as requiring a special use permit, you get things like churches, community halls, dog training facilities, driving ranges, bus stations, bumper boats, all those kinds of things. And what strikes me as kind of consistent across there is a lot of those that require special use permits, but they're enumerated uses, are things that have a much more dramatic impact on the zoning district and on adjoining districts than a self-storage facility. So I do think that it is consistent with a lot of the bakeries, retail, public utilities. I do think it's consistent with offices in terms of the coming and going, probably much less than an office.
I see where you're going with that. But when I consider adverse impact, I think of the aesthetics of the neighborhood, not so much traffic. I'll give you the traffic thing. I think you're probably right about that. But I'm concerned about the adverse impact of the neighborhood itself from this facility. And that's why I asked the question about the vegetative fence. I mean, that's really important to me, how this appears and its impact on the contiguous neighborhood.
Right.
It's nothing to do, I'm not asking about traffic, although I appreciate you talking about it. But that's not how I view adverse impact.
Right. Well, again, bear in mind that there's already a self-storage facility there. And the addition of the fourth building doesn't detrimentally impact the appearance of the facility on this lot, because it doesn't expand the footprint of the storage buildings or anything else. It's a building that would be nestled between two existing buildings. It's not before this board whether there can be a self-storage facility on this lot. There already is. It's a non-conforming use. It's been rebuilt, frankly, to look much better than it did before, with really significant improvements and openness to more improvements to make it more aesthetically pleasing. If you look at the impact of adding a fourth building, the aesthetic impact of that is negligible. I think it's a unique situation because of the circumstances where we've got an existing facility. It isn't this board's task tonight to determine whether they want a facility there at all, because there's already one there. It's just to determine whether a fourth building is consistent.
Well, I'm not arguing whether there should be a storage facility there or not. It's there.
Right.
But you're asking for approval from this board, and my reaction to that is I would condition it based on the appearance of that facility. You're still in the building phase. You've expressed a willingness to add the buffer. I'd almost like to see what we're talking about before I would render it. But it's important to me that this thing be a little more additive to the general community right now.
I understand, but Mr. Steffi, the role of the planning board is limited, I think, under the new ordinance, which is kind of one of those funky things that we're kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the role of the planning board is to determine at this meeting tonight whether it is consistent or inconsistent with the 2007 adopted Campbell land use plan. And I think getting into providing specific site conditions and requirements is outside the scope of the planning board. That's more so for the Board of Commissioners at their meeting on Monday night,
Right.
if there's specific attributes that are consistent with the requirements in the ordinance that they'd like to require to address some of these issues. If you feel like some of these issues are points of contention that can't be remedied and are inconsistent, then you should indicate that it's inconsistent. If you feel like it's consistent with the 2007 CAM land use plan, then you should adopt a statement of consistency to forward to the Board of Commissioners. But the planning board can't get into necessarily requiring site-specific attributes that aren't indicated in the UDO and that are in excess of just determining consistency or inconsistency.
I'll make a quick comment, and this is more of a question. Can we vote specifically on whether there is consistency with the 2007 CAMI land use plan and provide recommendations to the Board of Commissioners?
Well, we could certainly make recommendations.
Or considerations, 1, 2, 3.
Sure, we have an opportunity to
Then
brief the board.
it seems to me if that's allowed, then I think it's obvious to me that it's a consistent land use with 2007. But there are still concerns, Bruce. I share some of those. We could make recommendations or considerations to the Board of Commissioners for their consideration.
Me and Wesley have been talking, and to do some screen planning where the commissioner or the board wants to do it, we don't see any problem with that. What we would like to do is send in some, I'll pick out the trees, the heights and things, and the dress, and work with you guys on that end of it to dress this up to make this work.
And we'd certainly be open to discussing this in more detail with the Board of Commissioners next week. You know, certainly.
If it's encroaching in the neighborhood and you have those concerns, I've dealt with him before, and I know he will step up and do what it takes to make this thing work and dress it up for the neighborhood. He's already done that thoroughly with the buildings that he's replaced. The other ones were, I mean, let's face it, they were terrible.
Yeah, I don't mind putting an additional screen up there to make sure that this facility looks nice to the residents that are going down those sides.
Is this going to be accessible 24 hours a day?
No, man. I don't think that's the kind of clientele I want.
Yeah.
Hence the gate.
But
Right.
yeah, again, like, are we considering whether that single fourth building is conforming with 2007 CAMA, or are we considering whether the entire self-storage facility is consistent with it? Because if it's a non-conforming use that's going to be there, then the question isn't, is this consistent with B20 zone in general that we want with 2000, based on 2007 CAMA? Is this consistent with the B20 zone plus this non-conforming use that's already there? And if we think that's the question, then it's consistent with the fact that there's already a self-storage facility there. It's going to be consistent with the rest of that property. It's going to be consistent with all the rest of the buildings. It's going to look just as nice as the new buildings already look.
Yeah. And, I agree that it is, adding a fourth building is consistent with the other three, especially if they're all blue and white, right? And they're all aligned. And what my concern is, because there's been so much discussion recently with the new UDO and the land use plan, and we have some of the people here in the room with us, there has never been a desire to have storage facilities along Highway 24. So, and that really is kind of, makes it a little difficult when we're trying to consider what the residents have said to us about it. So, and like I said, I'm being honest, and I'm just putting it out there. And the residents need to know that we're hearing them, and that's important too. So, so I don't think we need a motion. Do we just take a vote on consistency?
Yeah, there was a statement of consistency that was included in the packets. So you could modify that statement of consistency or just vote on it as indicated in the packet.
The planning The planning board finds that the proposed special use permit for the property located at 101 Bogue Sound Drive to allow the construction of one additional storage unit building to be consistent with the town's adopted CAMA land use plan. The proposed special use permit is consistent with section 4.1, 4.5 of the CAMA land use plan. Does anybody feel like there's anything that could be changed to that to make it more appropriate? So we're voting on sending a favorable recommendation of the statement of consistency. And I see a show of hands for a yes on sending a. Sarah?
This is to send to the board consistency. Yes.
To send to the board.
Yes.
A favorable recommendation
Yes.
for statement of consistency.
Yes.
And we have a yes from Neil, Sarah, and Bruce. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I am not voting yes. So, Barb, you got everybody's vote? Okay, anything else, folks, on that?
Since
Go
we
ahead.
voted,
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up and to determine how we're going to continue that conversation. Yes.
I will draw a site plan and pick some trees out and we'll start with that.
Sounds
Do
good.
you want to make this at a board meeting or would you like me to submit it straight to you from the town?
We can't, we will not be working with you outside of this room. Everything
Okay.
we do is public.
Okay.
All of that would be through Zach. I would ask that you refer to our UDO. There is a list of plants.
Okay.
So just make sure that you're going off that list.
Yeah,
Bruce,
my recommendation would be, since it came up for discussion tonight, and I think we previously had the discussion about the screening requirements, to just make sure that for the Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday night, that's reflected in the materials that they have to review. Just that way they already have that in front of them and they can see where it's complying with that section of the UDO.
so just to be clear, Bruce's concern is Highway 24 as well as Bogue Sound.
I didn't say 24. I mean, I wish I would include 24, but I'm most concerned about those.
I have concerns on both streets.
I do too. Okay.
Okay.
Ben, I want to thank you for bringing your contractor and your attorney. It was very helpful. And Ms. Gordon, I appreciate the giving us the opportunity to kind of beach up a little bit because we, kind of needed to get to this point.
Well,
So,
yeah, I understand, and I'm happy to get beat up a little bit. And I also appreciate the fact that this is kind of a strange new world that we're operating in. I mean,
Right.
I'm used to the universe where the planning board does, where it's
Right.
where the public hearings are multiple on these kinds of things. So everybody's got to get used to the new statutes and ordinance.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thanks
time.
again. Okay, folks, next up is a review of a submission of a text amendment application for a change to table 11.5, which is the table of permitted use, special use, to allow multifamily in the R30 residential zoning district. And you want to put up that statement? Did they, wasn't there an actual change, text change that was provided in there?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, please.
So the All right, so we received an application for a text amendment on November 17th, 2021, and this would apply to the entire R30 residential zoning district. So that's important to remember, is that this is not a site-specific request, but it applies to the entire R30 zoning district. So just wanted to point that out. I'll put the text amendment application up on the screen, but the request is to add this as, to add multifamily as a permitted use in the R30 residential zoning district. And that would be in the table of permitted and special uses. So let me scroll down to the application. So there's the text that was included, which was to allow multifamily as a permitted use in R30. And that was to section 11.5 table of, that'd be the table of permitted and special uses. And then for this item as well, the planning board would be developing a statement of consistency and making recommendations, whether in favor or in opposition to the proposed text amendment, and determining its consistency with the adopted CAMA land use plan. So we've cited section 4.1 again for this, of the current 2007 CAMA land use plan. But that was the main items that kind of runs through it. Also put up the zoning map for everybody as well. So the R30 residential zoning district is all of those properties that are shown in yellow on the zoning map. Then I think it would be maybe appropriate to hear from the applicant if they have anything to offer.
I'm the applicant. I wanted to say some things.
Sure. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. And this was kind of, and I'm sorry, I didn't come too prepared. I actually didn't know, I don't know how it works with the communication. I didn't get any email or anything. Okay. I didn't get any email or anything about the meeting. I just found out about it last night. And it's really, and this is kind of confusing. I don't know how this happened. I'm not trying to do this to all R30. It was just for my property. And what had happened was I wasn't sure how to go about putting this application in. Actually, Zach was nice enough to talk with me about it. I know what to fill out. We talked about special use. We talked about some other things. And he had recommended doing the text amendment. That's why, so I have no desire to change all of R30. I just wanted to be able to put townhouses on my property on the golf course. So I just didn't want to, I wanted to say that, so I didn't want anyone to get in an uproar about what I was trying to do.
Well, the uproar is right there.
Okay. Well, that's why I wanted to explain. I'm not trying to rezone all of R30. I'm trying to do a project on my
Right.
property.
No, I get it. So what are you saying? Are you looking to withdraw this application
Well,
for
I don't-
a text amendment and come back with another
Well,
request?
I'd like to get your thoughts on how I should proceed with that. I mean, I was just, it was recommended that I'd go this route. It's the first time I've ever done it, so I don't know.
It is a sweeping change, all that yellow.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
it is. And that's
And that's what you're asking us to,
right. And that's not my intention,
okay.
okay? My idea was to take my property and put townhouses.
Right.
Just my property, not all of R30. So, I mean, my proposal is if you guys want to hear it, and I don't know if I need to just step back and resubmit or
You've got
Any
your
questions
right.
you guys have?
We are willing to hear,
Okay.
even if you just want to practice.
Well,
Just
I
go
mean,
ahead
I don't
and-
want to
go-
waste,
Go
I
ahead
don't,
and share with us.
I don't
what
want to
your
waste your
ideas-
time.
Oh, no, it's not a waste of time.
So the property is on the golf course.
Mhm.
It's 4 and almost 5 acre property that I like to do higher end townhouses on. My idea was to have the townhouses around the golf pole, and behind that would be parking. And if anybody doesn't know where the property is, it's on the corner of Star Hill Drive and Pine Lake Road. So if you guys have any questions on that, I mean, that's basically what my plans were to do.
So how many townhouses do you propose you could get on there?
I don't know yet. I haven't gotten into
Okay.
that nitty gritty just because I didn't want to spend that much money on how many units I could get on there. I do have a preliminary kind of layout. Anybody wants to see it?
Sure, you're You're welcome to provide us with anything. And of course, the questions that we're going to ask is, septic issues, multifamily, that's kind of a big deal.
Oh, sure.
So.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it's right now, it's in my work has been all been preliminary as far as not spending a ton of money, not knowing if I could even do it. So that's kind of an idea. It's not set in stone. It's kind of like a preliminary kind of plan.
so it looks like 3 buildings with several units.
Yeah. And my idea is a two-story units with, nice architectural components, some stone, kind of similar to over on the beach, right by the islander over there, those new condos they built, minus the commercial units underneath.
So this is showing 18 units. Right, 3 buildings of 6 each.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's, like I said, that was just laid out as an idea of what I could possibly do on the property.
Do we want to hear from, it might be valuable to,
And well, one more thing too, there are townhouses right across the street from my property also.
the other townhouses.
So
I'm sorry, what did you?
there are
just say?
other townhouses that were
Right,
previously built
right.
right next to my property.
And that's kind of another thing, right? So we don't have multifamily here in
Right.
Cape Carteret, and somehow those and Taylor Notion is, that's the only ones that we
Right.
that we have.
Understood.
Just want to say thanks for going first, because that clarified a huge issue that I think a lot of people had, because we were considering it as an entire rezoning.
Yeah.
So thanks.
No worries. I mean, well, actually, I didn't even realize, like I said, when I first did this application, it was like, how do I go about it? What steps do I need to take? And I just went with recommendations. So I can work with you guys, however, special use. I don't know how would you work with it?
So I saw that you don't live here in town, but you live in an adjacent town.
I live in Emerald Isle.
Um,
I actually lived
but-
in Cape Point for 10 years also.
But there's going to be some more discussion after this about our overall land use plan, and there's going to be a brief at the end of that. And I think it would be valuable for you to hang out and listen to that.
Okay.
Or kind of what we're looking at, what we're looking towards in the future, our bright idea.
Mhm.
And, maybe there's a place, that you see, fitting into that. But I do think it would be valuable for you to sit and listen
Yeah,
to
okay.
that. Okay. That it?
I guess. And
Okay.
no other questions? So what are your recommendations on my next
So the
step?
next thing we're going to do is, so a couple of people have signed up to speak,
Okay.
and we're going to give them an opportunity
All right.
to share their thoughts and feelings. We got quite a bit of email traffic
Oh, I'm sure.
about it.
I'm sure.
And,
I had no idea. Like I said, I didn't even know this meeting was tonight till a friend of mine told me last night. So I don't.
oh my gosh.
Chairperson Hall, can I interject and
Yes.
say a couple words?
Huh.
I'd suggest that if the applicant's intent is to do a site-specific, development type of approach,
Mhm.
maybe utilizing like a special use permit process would be
Yeah.
more appropriate. So if the applicant desired to withdraw their request for a text amendment, that would probably be appropriate if they choose to do so. We can go through and hear the public hearing comments on it, but if their intent is to withdraw it because they don't want it to apply to the entire R30 district, I don't know that there's a point to go through the comments on something that's going to be withdrawn at a later point in time. I also want to add that staff doesn't provide recommendations. They provide information on
Right.
each route that can be utilized. I just wanted to clarify that,
Oh, no,
you
no,
know,
I know that.
it's up to the applicant to retain
Right.
legal counsel or to seek the advice of a professional
Right.
on how they should proceed with their applications. I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
So at this point, you could choose either to withdraw the application for the R30 text amendment, and come back to us with another application.
Right.
Or you could leave it in place and we can hear from the folks who.
No, I mean, that's, like I said, that wasn't my intention for a broad span of R30, so I would withdraw that and maybe, like Zach said, fill out a special use permit application.
So I think the two different approaches would be you could do a special use permit application because it's not considered a permitted or special use in the table, but just like what we just talked about with the additional storage unit, this could be a special use permit application for the property and go through the special use permit process. Or the applicant can seek a rezoning to rezone that specific tract to R10 multifamily, which is the only multifamily zoning district that we have. I don't know which one of those options would be more complex. That would probably be something for an attorney to advise the applicant on which route to go, but those would be the two kind of routes forward.
So take a look at the UDO and it will give you an explanation of the R10 multifamily zoning category,
Okay.
for size and that type of thing. I don't know if that would, what is it, 7,500, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a fee for him to apply for the text amendment?
Yes, I paid $100 for my text amendment.
Is that refundable if he withdraws it?
I don't have the authority to
Oh, you
refund
don't?
anything, but
It's fine. Doesn't matter.
I think that'd be something either for the Board of Commissioners or for the Board of Adjustment, but that wouldn't typically be something that would go before the Board of Adjustment. I think the Board of Commissioners could probably waive that, but I don't have the authority to waive any fees, penalties, fines. Yeah, and it's freezing up on me now, but what we can do, we can provide you with the requirements for the R10, and then also a copy of the special use permit application, and then you can identify which route you want to proceed with
Okay.
for a future meeting.
Sounds good. Okay.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank
Sorry
you.
you found out
Sorry
you
for the
got-
confusion. Didn't want to get everybody all upset.
He has withdrawn his application for the text amendment. Now, Dot, you signed up to speak. Was it in regard to that or are you speaking on
I'm
something
going to
else?
speak anyhow,
You're going to speak anyhow? Okay,
because there are other circumstances that I want to mention.
sure. Move that mic down a little so.
Okay.
There you go.
I speak pretty loud. I'll probably hold your ears out. I'm speaking to express concern over changing the advertised parcel in Star Hill from R30 to multifamily development. He's withdrawing it, so addition of R30 for all of Star Hill will not be a topic. But we do not have a sewer system. There is already much concern over storm and wastewater runoff, drainage and flooding. The last thing we need is multifamily housing. I learned today from Paxson that there are people that are interested in patio homes, one-level homes, not two-story, up to the stairs living for families with children. With children, it creates a lot more traffic than one or two senior citizens. Mr. W.B. McLean incorporated the town of Cape Carteret in 1959. He did build 2 sections of townhouses with 4 units each. It is non-conforming use. He and his partners wanted to and did develop a fine community around a golf course. These properties have restrictive covenants down to the most minute detail about garbage cans and clotheslines. They never expected we would have drainage, stormwater, and flooding problems. We all have septic tanks. Multifamily homes will add to the storm, wastewater, drainage, and flooding issues, which the men are working with all the time. People admire the community and want to live and do live here. I went to every door last Sunday on Fairway Lane, a couple of houses on Sutton, and all of Quail Neck cul-de-sac, and was stopped by darkness. Some had read about the request from posting by a neighbor on Facebook. Others had received phone calls from concerned friends who had read the Facebook message. Although the town does post the notices in the required legal manner, it is in the classified ads, along with foreclosures, divorces, and death debt notices, which not many people look at, and not many people get that newspaper anymore. The notice is also listed on the town website, but not posted as a completely descriptive notice saying that it's going to be about whatever. There are other official postings not likely to be read by residents that are official spots to be advertised. The town does what they are required to do, but all of us do not go to the places where notices have to be posted. We do not approve of asking for a total R30 change when the request is for a small percentage of R30. And this, I bring in here again that the patio homes for senior citizens is not what's specified or requested. One-level homes for 1 or 2 seniors would be very different in the effect than townhouses with families with children. And this is a small town. We do not want multifamily homes. Do not change our peaceful community and the uncrowded way of life we prefer. Thank you. I'm only 91 and I fell once.
Wow, terrific. Okay, folks, next on the agenda is discussing the land use plan. And you want to take a break? Okay, sure. We're just going to take 5.
How you doing? Yeah.
Excuse me.
Talked about that. Now this side looks a little bit better. Yeah, that's why we That's what I'm trying to do. Instead of 10 feet, I think 10 feet, right now it's 20 feet, right? If I start looking at the screen, sometimes trying to do an 8-foot screen, this thing is the same as that, it's the same height. And, you know, you want the change. He commits another property, puts the president. So, just keep an eye out on. Right, I'll tell you right now. That's how we're trying to 8-foot screen.
All you need is a little seed and it'll start spreading.
All the way to the property line, kind of get the best amount of space. Especially if I'm gonna have to put shrubbery along this line. Yeah. Get something out there. Yeah. I really don't have an issue with this.
It's grandfather in.
Reuse what it was. I don't have no issue. Better use the thing, but that was the thing I had when I walked around. That I didn't think I could drive it. Short.
That wants me to put a sign.
Yeah, it's a good proving ground. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate
But
it.
help her design it. Help her design it.
That tough fella there, he didn't even drink the water or whatever. He's also from Star Hill.
Excellent.
And he-
We need help.
He's the new owner of the Wagons House. June and David Wagner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's from the married couple's house.
Yeah.
She was there a long time.
Nah, man, I live right next to this guy. So, Doc came by and got my attention.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
I wish I had the money to be in bed. Oh,
You know, I came in 4 months ago. The doc comes in. Right now, like, kind of, you know, she's like, started talking to her. When I saw that she was going to come in and speak, I was like, oh,
we just bought property for $1 million.
oh, yeah, yeah, residential. We just, yeah,
What's your background? How'd you get started?
Learning about it. But I'll be here at the
Okay. Here, you say I used to be a co-pilot. Used to be a co-pilot and MLS lab.
Well, that's
Yeah, I talk to you, see how help you get started. I
you want my number?
Yeah, just do stock market and stuff. Find the diversified. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on now to discuss the land use plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Ann Darby with Summit. She's going to take it. You got it, Ann.
Hi, can everyone see and hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. You can see me too, though, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And not going to see a presentation?
Got it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. First of all, nice to see you all again, even if it's virtually. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person next Tuesday for a joint planning board and steering committee work session on the land use plan. Right now, I just want to give you a little update, check in about the timeline. We'll go over a new concept that some of you have heard about, but hasn't been revealed yet, and we'll talk about next steps. So first, just to review our schedule, we are coming to the end of a process that started in March. We are finalizing the draft of the document, which we will work through with the work session of the steering committee and planning board. And we also have we have completed the public outreach, the summary, the forums, etc. I like to always refer to our scope of work that's in our contract, and it looks like we are on time, but we have to work really diligently to have this done by the end of the year. And remember that we're working on two different timelines for two different state regulations. One is that the Coastal Resources Commission needs to approve the camping plan, and that can happen anytime, but it will take about 3 months. We ask for 3 months to be able to review the document and go back and forth with any questions or changes. We'll have the draft plan to them by the end of this year. And after that, there's time for public meetings, which to review the plans, we have a public meeting and a public hearing described as the scope. We can discuss the details of at our meeting next week. And then there's time for plenty of back and forth. Anytime the Board of Commissioners can adopt the plan after the planning board recommendation, anytime between when the CRC approves the plan, which hopefully will be in March, and before July 1st, 2022, which is the Chapter 160D deadline. The two things I wanted to just at least lay out there and start really complete and have ongoing discussion next week. Here's a draft future land use map. It's so relevant to everything that y'all have been discussing, to whether or not multifamily is appropriate in residential neighborhoods. I understand that's a nuanced conversation. The biggest items that you'll see here in the future land use map is that the plan so far, the draft plan, is recommending to keep all single family residential as single family residential. Remember, we'll have this special use permit process as any kind of exception to that you want to permit. We've combined manufactured homes and single family residential, showing the difference here. And we also have added a medium density mixed use component, which is not a zoning classification or a future land use classification that Cape Carteret has ever had before, with the idea that residents want more amenities, they want a greater sense of place. We heard this resoundingly in the vision statement, the survey, and all other public input. And so the concept that I know that some of you have discussed is to create increased density. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but to create increased density in the area behind the shopping center, between Mac Daddy's and the Lowe's, for example. There are many details to be worked out. Please don't anyone be alarmed by any specific detail, but the concept in general that I know that Zach has talked to Paxton about and a number of others is to add density, to add a walkable town center behind in that area, utilizing a lot of that land in a more dense way and creating an actual town center with a town square where you could have offices, shops, restaurants, other retail, and you can also see that stormwater mitigation is going to be a huge part of it as you add density. It's very also relevant to your discussions this evening. And there are some details that need to be worked out. The planning board, that's one of the things that we'll discuss next week, are some of the nuances of the future land use categories, whether patio homes are appropriate, what height might be appropriate, etc. And so this is just a little bit of just a close of that town square area where you could have theoretically retail, offices, public town buildings, for example, and a public gathering space. So again, this is an initial preliminary concept. I know that a lot of people have different opinions, and but this has come up again and again, and this is a suggested response to many stakeholders asking for increased amenities, increased local businesses. This would add some depth to the economy, the local economy, sustainable. And again, this is the initial, the beginning of a discussion. The next step, again, I said we'll have the planning board and steering committee joint work session next 1 week from today. I'll be there in person, which I think will be a better way to facilitate a meeting. We'll discuss further elements. Again, I said we'll walk through the draft of the plan. We have the draft. We're still working on it, and it's about 107 pages right now, and will probably be a little bit longer. That's not including appendices. Don't worry, there are pictures and graphics, as we promised. We'll talk about further edits from the steering committee and planning board. And then this will need to get to the Coastal Resources Commission by the end of this year. And public meetings we can have on the draft plan. It'll be posted on the website for comment. We have a comment form on the website. There's the contact information on the website. Public meetings discuss the draft plan in January, and then a CRC ideally will approve within 3 months. If there's something wrong, they will go back and forth. So if they get approval, we'll make changes. Then the planning board will make a recommendation to the board of commissioners, and the plan should be adopted before June. Sorry, I said before June of 2022. The law is July 1st, 2022, but that means a June planning board meeting. I'm going to, unless somebody wants to see this, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can answer any questions.
And I just want to be clear, the planning board and the steering committee members are going to get the draft of this sometime in the very near future, and we're providing review comments prior to the meeting on the 14th.
No, our plan is to have it to you by the meeting on the 14th. Our experience has been, both in Cape Carteret with the UDO and elsewhere, is that if we don't walk through it, what the comments that we get a lot of confusion, get more comments that are actually just questions, and then we get grammatical edits. And what we want to do is have a productive discussion focused on the elements that really need to have feedback.
Okay, so we shouldn't expect to see this until the 14th, and on the 14th, we will go through content.
Correct. We will walk through it together.
I believe that's 6 o'clock. Now you have Ann 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah, 6. I couldn't hear that. Yeah, 6 o'clock. But I'll be there all day, so.
Oh, sure.
Susan, may I ask a question?
Yeah, Dave.
That first of their planning board steering committee work session together, is that what is being referred to as the 14th also?
Yes. Did you hear Dave's question, Ann?
No, I could tell it was Dave, but I couldn't hear his question.
He was just making sure that the first bullet was that the planning board is seriously going to do a work session on the 14th, and that's when we would be doing all this.
Yep. Mhm.
That sounds like a lot of meeting.
It is going to be a lot of meeting. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. You got it, Ann. Ann, did you have anything else?
No, that's it. I wanted to prepare. I wanted to know if there were any comments about the Main Street concept, but I also know that it's an idea that's been circling around and that we'll have more in-depth discussion about next week.
Yeah, I think there will be a lot of discussion, and honestly, the audio is not real good. It's difficult. It's difficult that you're saying, but we got the gist of it, and we're going to discuss it in detail next week.
Okay, I look forward to seeing you in person because I agree it's not great.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
That was the last thing on the agenda. Zach, could you real quick bring up page 12 of the existing and emergent conditions? We are almost done with the land use plan, and we're going to have to move on to our next endeavors with the planning board. So I kind of just wanted to throw out there what we want to be thinking about. What I'm asking Zach to bring up is this was from the existing and emergent conditions that we received in September, which comes out of the 2019 census. The 2021 census, I did a little bit of looking at it to see how it changed, and the trend just continued. And the trend that continues is an incredible increase in young children in town, and I think school age children, and that is from, especially kindergarten all the way through to high school. And so we're looking at right now about 400 school age children. And so I want us to kind of get in our heads that is the fastest growing population that we have, and we need to be planning towards that. The other is that I believe it's on page 14. Yeah.
Children, 400 additional children like projected into the future, or as of now, since the last?
As of now.
As of now. So
Yeah.
that trend's supposed to continue on.
It will, and that's what I wanted to talk about, because the projected population growth is literally doubling in the next 30 years. And there's a lot, and of course, if we continue with this rate of growth because it's young families is what it is, right? And so we really want to make sure that we are considering that in this land use plan, that things have changed a little bit in Cape Carteret with the population, and we need to be considering that as we go. And the fact that the population doubling is just kind of blew my mind. That's what we're projecting. See, 3,900 by 2050. And Zach, I think there was something on, I think there was 21 was the other page that I wanted to, I can't remember what it was. No, the pages must have changed. Oh, the median household income for 2021 is 96,000 now. So that is a huge difference in how our population is changing. And we just kind of it's important to keep that in mind as we go forward. That's all I had. Thanks, Zach.
No problem.
Okay, that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn? A second?
I'll second.
Great, meeting adjourned. Thank you.